What up, my fellow dorks? It is the Turtle Dork. We are back with a new recap and review for Game of Thrones. We are in season 5. This episode, season premiere, is The Wars to Come, directed by Michael Slovis. I'm the Turtle Dork, as I said before. This is the Disco Dork, and let's get into this shit. All right. Cersei's prophecy, with her as a child going to see the witch. So I know you said once this came up, you remember this episode. I mean, remember this scene. I vaguely remembered this as well, but as the scene started to play along, I do remember the prophecy as far as like her future and the witch telling her about the king, her becoming a queen, the king, and how many kids he has. As opposed
they're going to flash back to it.
They are
again,
I can't
because she's going. If I remember correctly, they're going to flash back to it again because she also tells Cersei about, like, if I'm not mistaken, like the death of her children. Not specifically, but it alludes to
that her children are going to,
like, how many are going to live or how many are going to die, or whatever.
Got you. I don't know. That's interesting for this to kind of be the opening. Not just for this episode, but for the season. So, I mean, I don't know what that. I mean, we know how the season plays out, especially for the character of Cersei when we get further along into the series. Of course, dealing with the Sparrows, which we kind of get some hints at later in this episode.
Well, this setup makes sense though. Like knowing now, like with the hindsight of having seen this particular season and where her character goes, like this setup actually. This we'll get to the scene after that, but the next couple of scenes perfectly set Cersei up as a character as far as her arc for the rest of this season.
Absolutely.
Because it mentions that she tells her the prophecy because Cersei wants to know, am I going to be queen? She says, yes, you'll be queen, but only for a short period of time.
Someone else will come up.
Beautiful younger person is going to overthrow everything and take everything away from you. Going to lose it all and all that shit. And then we cut in the next scene, which has its own purpose, but you see Marjorie in that particular scene.
And which alludes to what she was, what the witch was talking about.
Right, and in this season, this is the season where Cersei becomes involved, or she bumps heads with the Sparrows, and she gets her head shaven, and this is where they do the walk of shame thing. So basically Cersei hits rock bottom in this season, and so that was the whole point of even having this particular flashback, because this flashback is Cersei's thinking about this on her way to view Tywin's body at the ceremony.
And the next scene we had was Jaime and Cersei viewing Tywin's body at the Sept, and they have a conversation, an interesting conversation that alludes to a lot of what we're going to see in this forthcoming season, and kind of foreshadowing a lot when Jaime says to her, now that Tywin is dead, we got all these other people from the Seven Kingdoms and around Westeros that are going to try to overthrow them, going to try to take over. And I just thought that was just an interesting conversation, because he was saying, like, all these people are here waiting to view his body to make sure that he's dead. And I don't know, that just gives us a little bit of insight, and also for Jaime as well, because of what happened at the end of season 4 with him letting Tyrion go, and Cersei lets him have it with that, and you can see that to some degree Jaime does feel betrayed. By letting.
I don't think he feels betrayed.
I don't know, man, because I think
Jaime has to understand why Tyrion did that shit. For me, when I watch that scene, obviously,
but at this point, he doesn't know that.
Know what?
He doesn't know, like, the exact reason why Tyrion did that in that specific moment. I mean, as far as
at the fucking trial, first of all.
I'm not talking about the trial. I'm talking about everything, like that specific moment with Shae where Tyrion found him.
Even if Tyrion hadn't found Shae, I still think Tyrion had every reason to fucking kill Tywin. Tywin gave no shits about Tyrion. Look at what he was saying in his last moments to Tyrion. Like, he forever blamed him for
Jaime is not. Jaime didn't release him to kill Tywin. He wasn't expecting that.
I'm not saying he did, but he has to understand. Jaime understood. Jaime knows that Tyrion didn't do what he was accused of. Yet his father knew that he didn't do what he was accused of. Yet they had him tried and sentenced to death. Tyrion was sentenced to death by his father. Jaime knows that. A father that always viewed him as a monster, blamed him for the death of his mother. His whole life, Jaime knows Tyrion's thoughts and feelings about Tywin and Tywin's feelings about Tyrion. That whole conversation that between Tyrion and Tywin at the end, like you knew I didn't do this shit, yet you still had me sentenced to death. You always blame me for the death of my mother. You said I'm a monster. Jaime knew that shit.
I'm not opposing that. I just still think that he wasn't expecting him to kill his father, and the fact that he did kill his father.
I'm not saying he expected it.
I mean, if I was Jaime, I would feel some kind of way, and I think I would kind of feel betrayed in that moment. Not saying he's going to always feel that way, but I think right now in that moment, if I was Jaime, that's how I would feel. You know, knowing that, and Cersei even mentions that, you know, as far as her saying, like, you know, as a Kingsguard, you take action, and it's like, you know, Tyrion killed our father on purpose, but you did it by mistake. I mean, he feels some kind of way about that, and that's the way I look at it. I mean, but you're not wrong as far as like what you're saying about Tyrion and having motive to do that or feeling like, you know, but from Jaime's point of view in that moment, for me, I just think that I would feel some kind of way knowing that I was the one that set him free, and then the next day come to find out my father is dead. And I'm like, oh shit, you know, like this was because of, you know, this happened because of just like the things that people set stuff in motion. Like what we saw with Baelish, how, you know, him conspiring with Lysa to kill Aaron set all this stuff in motion. Like him, like, again, from Jaime's point of view, him releasing Tyrion set all this in motion. That's what's going to come as far as, you know, at this point from his perspective. That's just how I see it. So then we get to Tyrion and Varys when they arrive in Pentos. So that's the scene between the two of them, and he's been in the crate for I don't know how long.
Yeah, the passage of time is very vague in this show.
But he's been in that crate for a long time.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about the fact that he mentioned it in that, where he says, like, you know how difficult it is for me to take my shit and put it through one of these holes. And I like Varys' response. He was like, probably the same as me having to pick up your shit and throw it over the shit.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a great scene between the two of them, and it also kind of sets up their story moving forward. As far as also with Varys, and there's another scene between the two of them that I think gets deeper into it, but he does mention as far as like Robert Baratheon and you know, trying to restore the Targaryen legacy to a certain degree. And but we'll get a little bit deeper into that later on. But I thought that was an interesting scene between Tyrion and Varys, especially now since they're away from King's Landing.
Yeah.
You know, they're not in the mix of all, like you say, the infighting and the conspiring with everything that has to do with the Iron Throne. Now we're getting into a different aspect of this war and of this conflict.
So, you know, the point of this scene, if y'all don't remember, is that obviously Tyrion is still processing and what has happened as far as his involvement. Him killing Shae with his bare hands, him murdering his father, and then the whole trial, everything that happened at King's Landing with Tyrion. Like, he's still dealing with that. But Varys, his focus, and not in a necessarily selfish way of, you know, you need to not think about that and focus on the bigger picture. But Varys is thinking, okay, yeah, we got you out of that place. You're still alive. I'm still alive. The most important thing right now is there are, and he's not saying this, but in so many words, basically, you got White Walkers that are about to crush this wall. There's a woman who has 3 dragons who would be a better ruler than anyone in fucking King's Landing right now.
Yeah.
You may feel like you're worthless or you deserve to die and you want to drink yourself into a stupor because you killed your lover and your father. But outside of all that, I see the value in you, and that value could be of use to this woman who could potentially be the ruler that this kingdom deserves.
Yeah.
So you can pick yourself up and we can go and meet this woman so that you can advise her because your counsel is wise and needed.
Yeah.
and then we can get her into the position of power so that we can have peace and prosperity in this land. That's Varys' mind state. And I think for that particular scene, compared to, at the very least, my perception of Varys through season 1, all the way up until this point, actually, as I said before, I'm always like, I like that dude, but I don't know, like, can I trust that guy? Like, what are his motives? But as the show goes along, it becomes more and more clear that Varys is a good dude.
Yeah,
you know, his trade deals in secrecy and spies and gossip and work and subversion and espionage and all that other shit. But at the core, like, he's a good person who, at the end of the day, wants the betterment of the realm.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, you definitely see that, especially on rewatching where we are with his character now, and just seeing it right here in this scene here.
And I think that's what makes seeing those two characters together so good and entertaining and appealing, because Tyrion, with all his faults and all his, you know, his characteristics and everything like that, at the end of the day, like Varys, he's a good person too. Who cares about, you know, other people, and so it's always good to see those two characters again. And this is another scene that just further builds upon what their relationship is going to be later on. Yeah,
Sons of the Harpy murder the Unsullied soldier. That was
yeah, I remember that.
I remember. Yeah, once it happened, I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that.
When he lays down and that camera's pulling in, I'm like, he gets his throat cut.
Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly. But
well, that scene is interesting twofold. But it does set up the Sons of the Harpy, but it also is interesting as it gives a look at the type of people. And I can't speak for all of the Unsullied, but at the very least, some of the Unsullied are, where, you know, he just oversaw the toppling of the monument there in Meereen, and he is going to the red light district, and he enlists the services of one of the women there, and he doesn't want sex, and obviously, they have, you know, they've been cut, so they can't do it in that way, but you can still, like, you can still, there's still other ways, right? But he's not interested in that. He just wants the comfort and the embrace and the company of another person. So they just lay down together. And I don't know, I thought that was an interesting dynamic, and it adds depth and character to the you know, the Unsullied, who are just, you know, at first glance are just an army of nameless people or faceless soldiers who are just willing to do anything for Daenerys, and they're badass fighters and stuff like that. But they have, and we saw that with how they begin to explore Grey Worm and his interactions with Missandei and stuff. Yeah. But to see just that he isn't the only one, but then that shit turns left.
Yeah, absolutely. And then,
but you know what? And that guy who goes, and I don't know if you're going to talk about this right now, but the guy who approaches Dany to say, "Hey, we want to reopen the fighting pits." I don't know if you remember me remarking previously when he came and was like, "Yo, you killed my father," and I just wanted to. That guy, he has some connection to the Sons of the Harpy, because for some reason I remember, like, when everything goes apeshit in the end of the season and they start coming out assassinating people, like, I just remember seeing his face, like, reveling in, like, them pulling that shit off, or what the fuck is going down. But I don't like that dude. I don't trust him. I may be wrong because my memory is foggy on this series, but for some reason I feel like, I don't know, it might be the Mandela effect, but I feel like that dude is a bad guy, and he has something to do with the Sons of the Harpy.
I do want to talk a little bit about that, but just there's a lot as far as with the pits and everything, but we'll get to that. But the next scene is Jon Snow when he meets with Stannis, talking. So this was when he talks to them. Stannis is going to Jon Snow about amassing an army, and the army that he wants to get is the Wildlings. So I remarked last season that I wasn't sure, or I couldn't remember why Stannis was up at Castle Black,
because his army does come and save the day at the
this is after Watchers on the Wall in the season finale from the last episode. So it was in the last video. So I couldn't remember exactly why Stannis was there, because the last time we saw him previously was at the Iron Bank, where he was refused the funds to get an army. So which makes a lot of sense now. So if you take all those sequences from the Iron Bank, where he's refused the money to be able to get a bigger army, now we know why he's in the North, because in this conversation he mentions to Jon, like, look, if you can get Mance Rayder to bend the knee, because I want to amass an army, and I'm not looking at the people, I'm not looking at the Crows, I'm talking about the Wildlings. If I can get them behind me, we'll overtake the North.
You don't think he got that bank loan though? Because remember Davos gave that dope ass sales pitch. I think he got that army. He still just wants a bigger army.
I don't know. I'm thinking because Davos did bake that, but we don't know what happened at the end of that. I mean, they don't never allude to whether he got that loan. Because I think when they ride north of the Wall, like those banners that they had, those weren't just Stannis's banners. Like those guys, I think he got the money, maybe. He got the loan because of Davos. It just, at the very least, narrative wise and editing wise, like how you set up and tell a story with editing and stuff like that, it just wouldn't make sense. It just makes more sense that you end that, because that scene ends with the sales pitch. It doesn't end with a reaction from the people. It just ends with that sales pitch, and then you're left to wonder what happens. And then the next thing you know, Stannis has an army, and he's marching. He's north of the Wall on horseback. So I feel like he got the army, but because of what he's trying to accomplish and wanting to take back the North, knowing he has to go against the Lannisters and whoever their allegiances are, I think he rightfully wants to increase the size of that army and recruit the Wildlings. Yeah. So we have that between Jon Snow and Stannis.
But in order for that to happen, and the reason why Stannis is proposing this to Jon or telling him this at the top of the Wall is because he wants Jon to convince Mance Rayder to bend the knee.
Yeah.
Which plays a prominent part in this episode. Actually.
Yeah. So we have a small scene between Brienne and Podrick when they cross paths with Baelish and Sansa. So they're out like on the hilltop somewhere after that whole thing that happened at the end of season 4 with the Hound. And so
crossing paths in like the loosest, in the same way that Bran and Jon have crossed paths multiple times.
Yeah, we see that a lot with a lot of these characters, that if they only knew. But yeah, so Podrick they're telling her he's telling her, like, look, it's a couple days ride to the King's Road, we can try to still find Sansa. And he's like, look, Arya didn't want to come with us, so what makes you think Sansa? And basically she was also telling Podrick, like, look, we got you away from King's Landing. The only reason that Jaime requested you to come with me is because you weren't safe in King's Landing, but we're hundreds of miles from King's Landing. You don't have to be my squire. She's like, basically telling her, like, you don't even know a squire is someone who assists a knight. She's not a knight. And she's basically doing what she was doing previously.
No, but I think it's for different. I think it's for different reasons now. I think she's beating herself up. She's feeling like a failure. She's sworn to serve these different people and all people that she's admired. And she says it in the scene. All she's ever wanted to do was serve a noble person. And every time she swears to protect or serve someone, that person ends up dying, right? And she swore that she'd find Arya. Yeah. Arya told her kick rocks. She's not even sure where Sansa is. Unbeknownst to her, she's right there on the top of this hill in this carriage that you just see passing by. And she just had that monstrous Godzilla versus King Kong battle with the Hound. So, but she didn't. She's lost. She feels like she's lost everything that means something to her as far as her dedication and her her honor and what she believes in. And so she's telling Podrick, I don't feel like a leader. Why are you following me? Go do your thing. Before, it was like, look, I'm used to being on my own. Yeah. I don't need a squire. I'm a strong, independent woman. I can take my own armor off. Before, it was a sense of independence. Now, I feel like she's pushing Podrick away because it's a sense of failure. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Lancel... the Sparrows. So we have the Sparrows arrive in. Are
you talking about this? When the cousin comes up to Cersei?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And his father comes up and talks about. So we get a little bit of an introduction of who the Sparrows are to a degree. Granted, we haven't met Jonathan Pryce's character, who kind of leads the Sparrows and where that's ultimately going to go. But we're getting little hints as far as like what's going to end up happening at King's Landing, which also plays back to what Jaime was saying in the Sept when he was talking to Cersei, as far as like people, now that Tywin is gone, people are going to try to take over King's Landing, and now we get the introduction of the Sparrows and how they've kind of gotten to Lancel, and I don't know, I just thought that was a good scene, especially on the rewatch for me, because the whole Sparrow storyline kind of seemed like it came up abruptly. Maybe I just wasn't paying too much attention to it at first, but because I just didn't understand how they got so much power and so much influence in King's Landing. But if they what's his name, Lancel's father, I think, even mentioned that the Sparrows haven't been in King's Landing in some time, and this is the first time that they felt safe now that Tywin is gone to kind of reemerge.
I mean, it's just like any type of when you usurp any type of power in a country, you leave a wide open. You leave it wide open for another group, a stronger group, a worse group to come and take over. And this is kind of what's going on here. But with this particular scene, and I mean, even like the scenes with Cersei earlier on, this season feels like it's very Cersei centric and centered. And even though we do have developments with other characters, not even peripheral characters, but like Jon and Daenerys and Tyrion and stuff like that. But from my recollection, because again, like this
how we start this season, how we end it.
How we start and end it, and then with the Sparrows, and even the stuff that happens in Dorne, which is away from King's Landing, is going to affect Cersei directly because of her daughter.
Yeah.
Right. So it really feels like season 5 is Cersei's season, because if you look at it from a character standpoint, out of everyone else, she's the one that has, even just within this contained season, she's the one that has the most significant character arc, like the rise and fall. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think there's anyone more changed at the beginning or at the end of this season than Cersei. But yeah, because this particular conversation also, alludes to that. Well, talking about her, her cousin saying, I seek your forgiveness for our unnatural relations, and Cersei, and it's funny because Cersei is always dismissive.
I was about to mention that. She's very dismissive. The same way about the stuff beyond the wall, right? And then now with this, and that stuff is going to come back.
It always comes back to bite her in the ass.
Yeah. She's extremely dismissive. So, and even in this most recent season, season 7, with the whole thing with the White Walkers, where she even saw a White Walker, where they brought her to King's Landing.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, because if you look at why she's always dismissive, it's always because her own personal conflictions or whatever she's dealing with and emotions outweigh everything else. Everything else. So in that particular scene when she's dismissive of her cousin, she's mourning the death of her father, but she's consumed with anger more than anything at Tyrion, right?
Yeah.
And then in the current season, season 7, when she's dismissive of the White Walkers, she's still consumed with anger and Tyrion and everything else at King's Landing. So that it's blinding to her.
Let's get to we talked a little bit about it with the first scene with them, but Varys his proposition to Tyrion about Dany. So they want to sail to Meereen so that he can kind of be on Dany's council, so to speak. And I guess we talked a little bit about that because those scenes kind of worked hand in hand. But I just like what Varys was saying, when he was giving this proposition to Tyrion, and he was saying, like, look, we need a king that's, stronger than Tommen, but a little more gentler than Stannis. And, he was talking about Daenerys Targaryen, Daenerys, and he was like, you could sail with me to Meereen, or you can stay here and just and drink drink yourself to, whatever, to death or to sleep or whatever the case. He's like, look, well, I can drink. Can I drink on the way to Marine? So I like the fact that now they're going to be on this journey to meet up with Danny, which is some of the best stuff that we've seen in some of the later seasons with Tyrion and Danny. So now we have Daario and Danny, and that whole sequence of events from when the guy that you don't like, that you think from Marine is talking about like the people of Marine and Yunkai want her to reopen the fighting pits. And also the conversation that Daario is having after they made love again. So now I guess that's their thing now. That's what they're doing. But the thing that Daario was talking to her about, like, you're not the mother of the Unsullied, you're the mother of dragons. It's kind of just talking to her about what she needs to, how she needs to kind of, I don't know how you would put it. Maybe like, I guess not take up against the people that are trying to rebel against her, but I guess you could say that.
Well, he's just trying to make a case for opening the fighting pits, and he does so by relating a personal story about how he was sold into slavery as a kid, and he fought his first gladiatorial fight in the fighting pits at 16, and how Danny sees that, the people who are doing that, she sees it as a negative. Like, why would I open up the fighting pits to allow human cockfighting? And Daario relates to her that, well, maybe the people who are partaking in it don't see it in the same way that you see it, because I wouldn't be who I am and where I am had it not been for that. Because I was sold into slavery and sent to the fighting pits, I learned how to fight multiple different fighting styles. I became a champion. I gained notoriety and recognition. It made me feel like I was somebody and gave me self-worth, and it led me to this moment right here. So I don't see, and I thought about, was like, when people look at, kind of related to like when people look at like either adult entertainers or like strippers or whatever, like we'll look at it like, oh man, like that's bad that they have to do that or to get through. But you don't know, that person might firstly enjoy doing it, and secondly, it might be serving them well in their life and their livelihood. Like you don't know. So I don't know. I think that so that conversation that they were having, he's just trying to say that I understand like why you don't want to do it, but maybe you should do it, and also don't be afraid to be the mother of, like, you're the mother of dragons. But and so Danny at this point though, her end of it is that we saw last season how, and even previous scenes before that, how she's starting to kind of lose. The dragons are going into their teenage years, so as a parent, like when your kids are little, you can tell them what to do and they'll listen for the most part or whatever, but then when they become teenagers, they become more rebellious, and you feel like you're losing your grip on them, you're losing control, and that's how Danny feels at this moment. And so she's losing confidence in herself and her relationship with her dragons and her control over them. And so I think also that is affecting how she views her leadership. And so Daario is trying to give her words of encouragement, like, yo, like you mentioned, you're not the mother of the Unsullied, you're the mother of dragons. Find a way to reconnect with them and do what you do what you're supposed to do. And then that scene, and we transition to
when she's in the I guess the dungeons and goes to visit two of her dragons that she has chained up, Viserion and Rhaegal.
And as it is annually, this is the first time we see them since last season. These motherfuckers I would say tripled in size, because when she put them down there, their heads were like this big, because she was able to hold the chain and put the collar around their neck. Now them jokers are like
which I don't know how the chain stayed around their necks, but
I'm assuming like they would change them out as time went on and they got bigger.
I don't know. I mean, again, we don't see it, so how do we know? We don't know that. So Jon Snow, so he's trying to convince Mance Rayder to bend the knee. That scene. I don't know how I feel about Mance Rayder's stance. I mean, I get it, but I mean, it's different for us as viewers. We're not in we don't live in Westeros. We're not at Castle Black. But I get Jon trying to convince him, and I understand, I guess, Mance Rayder's perspective to a certain degree. But what Jon is saying to him is like, look, are you worried about what's more important, the safety of your people, or is it your pride? And Mance Rayder keeps saying, like, fuck my pride. It's not about my pride. But to me, it seems like, to a degree, it is about that.
You know what? I liken it to. And I was trying to, when we were watching it, I was the same way. I was trying to find the meaning or the rationale. And granted, I understood Mance's standpoint, but I was trying to find some connection to it that I could relate to. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Cassius Clay and not going to war, not going to fight a foreigner's war.
Yeah, and he mentions that.
That was his standpoint. That was Mance's standpoint. I'm not going to have my people die for some war that doesn't involve us, that we don't even believe in, right? And that was Cassius Clay's standpoint. And he refused to bend the knee. Yeah. And because of that, granted, Mance gets burned alive, but because of Cassius's standpoint, he had to go to jail for that. Mm-hmm. And so do I bend the knee, sign up for the service, and let my people, the black people, see me be weak and not stand true to what I believe in? Yeah. Or do I take the L? Do I go to jail and come out on the other side of it a legend and a hero to the people? You know what I'm saying? Granted, you know, if I don't go fight this war, the war's going to happen anyway. And granted, people are going to die, right? But at the end of the day, I took no part in the death of or any of that stuff. That's something that I wasn't believing in, that didn't hold true to my beliefs. And at the end of the day, like when we look at Cassius Clay and or Muhammad Ali, he's also, you know, he's looked at as a champion because of his fighting record and stuff like that. But also for people who really know him and really hold him up, it is because of those things and those beliefs and who he was outside of the ring and how he stayed true to that shit. Yeah, true. So I think that's where Mance is coming from. At the very least, that's the only way that I can connect and relate to what he's saying.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I definitely could see both sides of that, because you want to try to have a preservation of the land and the people that live on it. And I see Jon's point of view as well, but I definitely understand, especially towards the end of what Mance was saying about having his people fight a foreigner's war and have them die for a cause that they probably don't even believe in themselves. So yeah, I guess that does make a lot of sense. And then we get to the final scene when Mance Rayder is burned alive. So Stannis gives him one last chance to bend the knee.
Yeah, because I was trying to remember, like, so last season we had the battle at Castle Black, and that's where Ygritte was killed. Mm-hmm. She was shot by the kid, and I was just trying to remember, like, what happened that made that kid want to kill, stab Jon. And I thought, I just couldn't remember what it was, because this episode, not this episode, but in this episode when we first see Jon at Castle Black, he's training that kid how to fight, and they seem to have a good rapport. And Jon's kicking his dick in the dirt, but it's like a tough love, like, come on, man, keep your sword up. I'm trying to get you ready. And the kid, like, he's receptive to it. He doesn't like getting knocked in the dirt over and over, but he can tell that Jon is doing it with good intention. So I'm like, damn, what happens that makes that kid want to stab Jon? And it's to me, I think it's what transpires in this scene.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could, and they even kind of allude to it a little bit earlier in the episode, is that how Jon does kind of have compassion for the wildlings, because Stannis mentioned in that one scene between him and Stannis, he mentions that, you know, he took the wildling girl north of the wall to burn her. Yeah. And of course we know that and specifically Ygritte was the one that killed that kid's father in that village. So I guess he has a certain feeling towards the wildlings, and to see someone like Jon Snow show a certain amount of compassion and sympathy for the wildlings, that could be, especially for a kid that's like 13 years old or so, not knowing how to process those feelings. I can understand like how he could have a little bit of resentment as we move further into the season towards Jon Snow, that would lead him to be one of those people that end up stabbing him.
I think especially if the kid finds out that he buried Ygritte north of the wall, you know, ceremoniously, and just show her that respect. But also, definitely, I think the straw that broke the camel's back and the arrow that pierced the fucking heart is when Jon did a mercy killing for Mance, because that kid was getting gratification out of seeing him burn alive. And like, all right, good, you're suffering. I'm getting justice, and I felt like Jon robbed him of that justice, or that feeling of justice.
Yeah, and great acting by Ciarán Hinds. That almost brought me to tears, just seeing his performance in that moment of him slowly being burned, and you could see him being scared, and him just in that moment, just great acting by him. Again, just how these performers are able to just connect with the audience in certain scenes, man, to just get you emotionally invested. So, great way to end his tenure on the show.
It's funny, man. There's so much foreboding and foreshadowing, and even in this not only in this episode, but specifically in this scene, because as he's burning, the Red Woman is giving this speech about the choices between, you have a choice between, which side you fight for, the Lord of the Light or the Dark or whatever. And as she's setting Mance on fire, we're cutting with this monologue she's giving. We're cutting to Stannis' daughter and his wife.
Oh yeah.
And you see when she says when the Red Woman says you have a choice between the Lord of the Light and the Dark, you see the look on Stannis' wife's face. It's this look of elation. And then you see the somber look on Stannis' daughter's face. And just knowing, like, first go around, you just don't, that means nothing. That shot means nothing, right?
Yeah.
But like knowing what happens, that shot means so much. It means so much. So
yeah. So that is the season premiere of Game of Thrones season 5. This is episode 1, The Wars to Come, directed by Michael Slavis. Great. It's the first time I think I've seen this dude's name. So this is the first episode. One he directed. Great, good opening episode for season 5. Again, I'm excited to rewatch this season because I don't remember season 5 being one of the strongest seasons, because we do know that this is where they started to veer away from the books a little bit and kind of do like their own thing. But I know a lot of our favorite characters kind of get dragged through the dirt this season. I mean, of course, we talked a little bit about Cersei. We're going to see that, I think, also with Sansa. So yeah, this could be from my recollection, it could be a little bit of a dour season, but I'm excited to get into it.
I think this is going to play different on a rewatch this season, because I felt the same way. Like my biggest thing against this season, my initial watch, I just didn't like the shit with the sparrows. Yeah, and not because it was poorly written or acted or whatever. It was just so I hated them so much. I just wanted them all dead. Like, so it just.
Well, they did get theirs.
But during, like, when I was watching it, and you got to remember, like, I was the initial watch. I'm watching from week to week.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't have the satisfaction of hurry up and getting to the come up and shit. I was like, oh man, I hate these dudes. But hopefully the rewatch will play better, because this episode definitely played a lot better for me than the first go around.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, man. So let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Remember to rate, like, subscribe, and share, and check out our other dorks at Mouth Dork, at WB Dash, at Sidewalk Siren. I am the Turtle Dork. This is the Disco Dork, and with that, we are out of here.